Now I know that you have this stubborn, closed-minded person in your life. They won't listen to you. They won't look at the other side. The more you talk about it, the more they hold on to their views. It's actually called the boomerang effect. What can you do? How can you influence? How can you persuade that stubborn, closed-minded person? Let's do it.
Maximize your influence. Kurt Mortensen is the author of Persuasion IQ, Laws of Charisma, and the best-selling book, Maximum Influence.
Welcome back to Podcast 555 for Maximize Your Influence. Kurt Mortensen here as we talk about persuasion, motivation, influence, mindset, human psychology, why we do what we do. I know you don't want to hear this, as I know you want to be one and done. Persuade somebody, but that's not how the human brain works, especially when people are stubborn and closed-minded. They don't want to see the other point of view. How do you sway them? How do you boil them like a frog? You're like, what? I don't know where this story came from, but I've heard it many times in my life. If you take a pan of boiling water and you put a frog in there, it's going to jump out. It doesn't like it. But if you put cold water on the stove, put the frog in there, likes the cold water, turn up the heat, the frog won't jump out and it will boil to death. Now, I don't know if people have actually tried this. I've heard it many times. I've never tried it. So we're going to use that example to where hot water, they're jumping out. But if you can turn the heat up a little bit at a time, that's how you sway people. That's the key. So let's kick it off with our persuasion blunder of the week.
Don't!
Well, this goes to Der Wiener Schnitzel, if you've ever heard of them. I'm not sure if I've actually been there. I think I've been there when I was a kid. Anyway, this is I think it's international hot dog specialty store. And I was driving by, and a sign caught my eye. And it says, now serving fish and chips. I'm like, whoa, wait a minute. That's like getting a burger at a Chinese restaurant, a taco at a burger place. I think you see where we're going here. It just doesn't fit. You look at some of the most successful fast food restaurants, like In-N-Out Burger. They're on the West Coast. Pretty much all you have is soda, fries, a shake, and a burger. Really nothing else. I mean, you can get a double burger. You can get a triple burger. You can get onions on that burger. You can get cheese on that burger, but that's all they do. And they have the longest lines in town. Then you take places like Jack in the Box, if you've seen those. I think they're on the West Coast too, but they have everything. From burgers to tacos to egg rolls to breakfast at any time. They have everything on their menu. So do we focus? What do we need to do? As you always hear, you grow rich in your niche. If you try to please everybody with everything, then you spread yourself a little too thin. And think about that for your business, what you're doing. Are you spreading yourself a little too thin? Are you focusing on what you need to focus on, what you do best? Don't add the fish and chips if you don't need to. And that's what I love about food trucks. They offer one specialty item. That's what they do. That's what they focus on. People chase them down. They're very loyal. They do that one thing very, very well. In fact, I saw this food truck the other day. All it did was nachos. That's all it did was nachos. Different kinds of nachos, but it just did nachos. Focus on what you do best. Make it the best. Be the best. And you will sell with the best. So that's our blunder of the week. Which brings us to our geeky, scholarly article. This comes from UC Berkeley, the journal PLOS Biology, and research scientist Dr. Simon and professor of psychology Dr. Walker. This is talking about daylight savings. Now, if you're around the world, not every country does this, but for some reasons, the United States wants to change their time twice a year. Is it supposed to save gas and electricity? Nobody likes it. Nobody wants it. They're actually trying to get rid of it where they go forward an hour, backward an hour. It just screws you up. You get your sleep pattern just right, then they're going forward, back. We get tired. I haven't met anybody that likes it. They've just been doing it for so long, we just go along with it, not really sure what the benefits are. So they looked at the daylight savings, right, where you lose sleep. And the title of this article is Sleepless and Selfish. Lack of sleep makes us less generous. So we all know lack of sleep can screw us up. I mean, lack of sleep's been associated with cardiovascular disease, depression, diabetes, hypertension, If you're really tired, it's like driving under the influence. But they also found that lack of sleep impairs our basic social conscience, making us withdraw our desire and willingness to help other people. When people lose 1 hour of sleep, there's a clear hit on our human kindness. So these scientists looked at the charitable giving in the week after daylight savings time when people lost an hour's sleep, and charitable giving dropped by 10%. So when we're not getting enough sleep, not only does it harm our mental and physical well-being, but it also compromises the bonds we have between each other. So they've done research over the past 20 years where we discovered that link between our sleep health and our mental health. Then they took a deeper dive on how we operate as a social species, that we have to get the sleep to be nice, to give, to be charitable. So if you're not getting enough sleep, not only does it hurt your mental and physical well-being, it hurts your entire social circle, including strangers, people you don't know. So they were scanning brains, because that's what scientists do. Sleep, lots of sleep, no sleep, little sleep. And they found the areas of brain where it triggered empathy and got us to understand other people's wants and needs were less active after a sleepless night. So people were not responding with empathy. They weren't interacting with people as much. They were just tired. So bottom line, those that didn't get a good night's sleep were less willing to help others the next day. So they found sleep is the lubricant to pro-social behavior, connecting with people, empathy, being kind, and being a generous human being. So for the places that didn't change their clocks, the daylight savings time, there wasn't a drop in gift giving. It was only because of the lack of sleep. Another interesting thing they found, that a lack of sleep increased people's feelings of loneliness. But here's the worst part. When people are sleep deprived and they interacted with other people, it was like a virus. They spread their loneliness to other people. So lack of sleep makes people less empathetic, less generous, more socially withdrawn, and it's like a virus. If you're feeling lonely, you're making other people feel lonely. So are you getting enough sleep? Is it hurting your social interactions, your empathy, your connections, your ability to give to charity? I don't know. Think about it. Kind of interesting how important sleep could be. And even thinking about when you're influencing someone who's not getting sleep, maybe you want to wait a day or two till they've caught up. Maybe give them a weekend to sleep in before you try to influence them, because timing is everything in persuasion and influence. So to go along with our stubborn theme today, let's get into listener email.
Oh boy!
Remember, send an email or send anything we use on the podcast, from humor to suggestions to a topic. You get the gold version for free of influenceuniversity.com. Hey, send me an email at Kurt, K-U-R-T, at maximizeyourinfluence.com. Let me know what you think. Give us a like, give a subscribe. Go to maximizeyourinfluence.com, register for the newsletter, take your free persuasion IQ, check out our latest training programs, check out the links to the archives. It's all right there. So this is from Henry from Wisconsin in the United States. It says, Kurt, my brother-in-law, and I'm not going to say his name, is hard-headed, stubborn, close-minded, won't listen, won't look at both sides of the issue. He always likes to talk politics, and it seems like I always lose. How can I change their mind, get them to see a different point of view? Great questions. A lot of people ask me that. That can be a challenge. It's like when I work with government agencies, they want to learn how to influence without authority, how to influence up. They're like, how do I influence someone that doesn't care, doesn't come to work, has retired mentally, but still working, won't listen, won't do anything, can't get fired? What should I do? I'm like, get another job, go someplace else. I mean, what could you do when there's nothing in it for them? They don't care. They're not open-minded. No, not everyone's like that, but there are a lot of people that are just shut down. It's not worth your effort. I mean, you have to take a look at that. And you're talking politics in our cancel culture. I mean, we've always disagreed in politics. I think you can go back to the beginning of time. No one's agreed how government should be run, but we used to be able to talk about it. Now people just cancel you for thinking differently. In fact, I was listening to Arthur Brooks. He talks a lot about what's happening in society, that contempt, loving your neighbor. Anyway, he says that on average, in the United States, that people have lost 1 out of 6 friends based on politics. Really? We can't talk about politics. We can't stay friends with different point of views. but that's the trend. And here's the challenge too, when people talk about politics or whatever the topic is, religion, COVID, I mean, all these hot topics out there that people always want to talk about, is I call it the sucker punch, meaning they've done all this research, they come to the family gathering, they have this point of view, they have spent all this time on research, you know nothing. It's like a sucker punch. Now, a sucker punch is where they kind of hit you when you're not looking, and they expect you to debate it. They expect you to defend your point of view when you haven't had time to do research. They're coming prepared. They've done their research. That's what they're focusing on, and they're blindsiding you with this new information or information you haven't thought of. And of course, it seems like they know more. Of course, it seems like they're winning because they spent the time to do the research and look it up. This might be the first time you ever heard about it or even thought about it. So let's get into this. How do we sway minds? Now, again, I know you want to be one and done, but you have to boil that frog a little bit at a time. It's known as foot in the door. We've talked quite about this technique. So foot in the door, it's easier to persuade people a little bit at a time than a lot bit at a time. I could try to persuade you in one big 2, 3, 4 hour meeting, but that's just too much for the brain. It's easier to persuade someone in maybe 10 little meetings, a little bit here, a little bit there, an email here, a conversation here, a study here, a comment here. That's what changes the brain. We have to have patience as persuaders and influencers. You have to have time to thaw the ice. Sure, you put the ice in the microwave, but no, just let it thaw a little bit at a time, a little bit at a time. That's the key to help people open their minds to realize that they don't have the truth, that everything they think isn't 100% correct, but that's where people's brains go. They think they're 100% correct and you're 100% wrong. That's not right. And if you have the attitude that maybe they're 20% correct and you're 80% correct, maybe they're 50% correct, you're 50% correct, especially when we talk about politics, most people want pretty much the same thing. I mean, who doesn't want safe streets, good education, clean air? It's just how we get there. But we have to have these conversations and talk it through. Have both sides be open. Again, if they're not willing, is it worth your time? In fact, that was one of the big eye-openers for me when I was working on a graduate degree. They had a list of controversial topics up on the board, and you had to choose one and choose a side. And everyone had their side, everyone had their opinions, and it was a game changer when the professor had us turn it in, and then he says, okay, now I want you to write a paper on the opposite point of view. I never thought about that. That's interesting. What a great point of view. And it puts yourself in the other people's shoes. And when you could understand their point of view, you could have a better point of view and help them realize you understand both sides. Because remember the boomerang effect. If you prove that they're wrong, they're just going to hold on tighter and tighter and tighter. Just guide them down that path. Let's explore it together. Let's look at both sides. Let's do some research. Let's talk about it. And it can be fun. This is good that we disagree on things. If we agreed on everything, life would be good. Life wouldn't be fun. It's okay to disagree. So this is what you do. First thing is, well, let's find common ground. I mentioned politics. Who doesn't want to be safe? Who doesn't want good education? Who doesn't want clean drinking water? Who doesn't want fill in the blank? Come across as neutral. Okay, let's talk about it. Let's start with what we agree on, right? There's got to be some common ground there somewhere. Because people are more open when they feel understood. You understand their side. You're not judging them. You still love them. You still care about them. You find that common ground. That's why it's important, even in negotiation. Let's say it's your third or fourth meeting. It's critical to discuss the things that you've already agreed upon. That common ground. That gets people in the right mood. We all agreed so far. We're getting there. We're getting close. And that's the whole concept of the foot in the door theory, is a little bit at a time. Get a few yeses at a time, a few, let's think about it, let's see. And part of that too with negotiation is to solve the easiest issues first, to find that common ground. Everyone goes to price to the hardest ones first, and of course they don't come to agreement. They're starting with the hardest ones. But if you have 10 items, you should make a list from easiest to hardest. All right, delivery date, June 1st. Who's on the team? Bob, Frank, Joe, and Sally. All right. Get it going. Yes, yes. Every yes you get, the next yes is easier. Remember this study? We talked about it before. Psychology students. Hey, will you help us with this study? This Saturday, it was like 7 a.m. It was really early in the morning. They got like 24% to say yes. But they broke it down. Hey, will you participate in this study? Oh, yeah. Saturday available. Yeah. It's at 7 a.m. Can you come? Went from 24 to 56%. More than doubled. Smaller yeses, easier yeses, break it down to smaller pieces. That's the key to persuasion and influence. So find that common ground, the shared values, the shared goals. What do you agree on? And then go from there. The next area, and this is part of building that cognitive distance. I mean, you can tell people they're wrong. Just ask questions. What's going to happen there? Why do you think that is? Just look at the pros and cons of this issue. But all right, let's make a list of why this is important, why people want it, and why people don't. Looking at both sides. So if you can ask questions, lead them down the path to help them realize, maybe I'm not 100% correct. Maybe I haven't looked at everything. Questions, it gets that fear to erode away a little bit and gets into that logical thinking, that logical mind, where people can be open to see both sides. Now, again, when you're asking questions, you don't want to be the lawyer or the parent quizzing their teenager where they were for the past 6 hours. You want to be the consultant. You want to be the doctor. Tell me about your history. Tell me about your past. What do you think about this? Why do you believe this? So if you're more like the consultant or the doctor instead of the lawyer and you're on the witness stand. And of course, during this whole time, active listening, nodding up and down, good eye contact. You're truly listening to their viewpoints. You're not interrupting. You're paraphrasing. Let me see if I got this right. This is what you believe. This is what you think. You think this is going to lead to higher taxes. You think it's going to do this. This builds trust. And this opens the door for a constructive conversation. And as you're doing this, make sure you've done your research. And if you haven't, if they're doing that sucker punch, they're blindsiding you, say, hey, can I do a little research? Can we talk about this next time? Can we do lunch next week? I really haven't researched this. I'm feeling kind of in the dark here. Bring credible evidence and say, let's look at this. Let's look at a couple different search engines, a couple different news sites. Let's compare your news source to my news source. So have your evidence, know where to go, look at both sides, compare the evidence and the data, look at the sources and the statistics, which ones are believable, which ones should you focus on, help open that there's different points of view, there's different research studies, there's different evidence. That's a critical thing with what you're working on. So be prepared and say, hey, let's look at both sides. And part of that too is the law of social validation and maximum influence. Let's look at the proof. Let's look at other people and what they're saying, people that they believe in, people they accept as credible. I know when you're dealing with kids or youth, a famous athlete that said, don't do this, do this, can be very powerful. Other countries that have tried it before, their before and after picture. Other people that have tried it before, their before and after picture. What have we found out? What's going on? What is the social proof out there? Can make a huge difference. And when you're doing this, work on your EQ, your emotional intelligence. I'm glad you're passionate about it, but hey, really care. They're human. They have a different opinion. That's okay. They're your family. They're your friends. You still love them. You still care about them. They can have different points of view, and you need to show that you care no matter what. Even if they're rude and mean to you, you still have to show that you care, that you have that empathy. If they throw some profanity, some zingers at you, it's not getting to you. You smile. It's not going to bother you. No, let's talk about it. Come on. Let's talk about it and see. But if you could have the attitude of, tell me more. Let's look it up. Let's talk about it. Let's see. Let's do some research. You have the empathy. Even if they get upset or angry for being one-sided, no, let's do some research. Let's talk about it. Let's be open. Find that common ground. Have your evidence. Ask questions. Look at the pros and cons. Know that it's not going to be one and done. This is going to happen over time. That's the key to changing that stubborn, closed-minded, hard-headed person. So that's the big skill. Having patience, foot in the door a little bit at a time. Don't boil the frog all at once. And let me know if you've ever boiled a frog. I haven't done that, but anyway, don't do it all at once and throw that frog into the boiling water where they jump out. Hold on tighter, boomerang effect. Just turn the heat up a little bit at a time, discuss it a little bit at a time, have a little empathy, show them that you care, and you can sway that stubborn mind. So that's our podcast for the day. Thanks for being here. Appreciate your time. Tell your family, friends, and enemies about the podcast. We're continuing with influenceuniversity.com/special. 90% off a lifetime membership from the persuasion software to the 52-week advanced persuasion program to the library to my audiobooks to to my advanced videos on the perfect persuasive presentation all in one spot. Hey, there's also a free area of influenceuniversity.com if you want to check that out. I'll put the link under podcast 555, and the links will also be in your weekly email. So smile next time you encounter that closed-minded person. It's a challenge, it's fun, you get to sway them over time. You can do this, you can be more influential, you could be more empathetic, you can be a nicer person. Use these skills and go out and persuade with power.